Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of J.S. Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today we're looking at Weil Gott nicht, mich und diese Zeit, which translates to, if God were not with us at this time. We have a longer chorale today with kind of an interesting form. It's deceptively long, but really we have a repeat of the first two sections again. In fact, for some reason this version of the chorale didn't have a repeat sign, but we easily could have put a repeat sign after measure 8. So I'll go ahead and do double the analysis because that's the way it was written out, or at least the way it was published. Maybe it was published that way with intention, but I don't really see any differences between the two sections, at least harmonically, and I'm pretty sure melodically too. But that being said, we should just get into it. Let's just talk about it. So we have two flats in the key signature. We end on G major. We start on G minor. I think we are in the key of G minor. However, our first cadence is a perfect authentic cadence in the key of C minor. And we see B natural in the melody of all places and A flat here. So I think we modulate pretty quickly from the key of G minor. So if we go here and we just call this a 1 chord with some passing tones in the melody and the tenor, and we call this G minor triad here with this neighboring A flat, kind of an expressive chromatic tone. This B natural indicates that we now have G major, right? G, D, G, and B natural. And that would be 5 of 4 because G major is the dominant of C minor, and C minor is our 4. And I think this is the point in which we modulate. We either modulate using G minor as a common chord or G major, and G major sounds more like a common chord, even though it seems very instantaneous. But we'll say we modulate here, and we'll just call this 5. This F is a passing 7th. We then have E flat, G, and C. That is now our tonic, C minor in first inversion, so that would be 1-6 with a passing tone in the bass. And then we have C, D, G, and D. However, I think it's this B natural we're looking at here. So B natural, D, G, and D, which would be another 5 chord, G major, but this time in first inversion. And as we get ready for the cadence, we have C, G, E, and C. That is our tonic triad. Sorry, this is E flat, so this would be C minor in root position. We then get a little bit of an inversion going on here, so we still have chord tones, but the chord still inverts. And then we have G, G, D, and B. That's our root position 5 chord. We get a delayed 7th here in the tenor over the bass that leaps down an octave, and then we cadence on C minor. Perfect authentic cadence. We get a tonic with a tonic triad with the tonic and the melody as well. Okay, looking ahead, we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of B flat major. Now, because we get, we kind of have an interesting case here, and we get this seemingly C minor chord here. However, we have C minor going to B flat, which is going to be our new tonic, and I think we have a little bit of a kind of a deceptive progression here, but I don't mean it in the sense that we have a dominant going elsewhere. It's deceptive because we might be tempted to call this the common chord, the C minor that takes us to B. However, I think this C minor chord is our common chord, and we can consider it 2 now in the key of B flat, because what happens here is what I often analyze these minor chords as. When they have a leading tone on the offbeat, I usually hear these more so as diminished triads, right? A, C, E flat, and C. So this would be A diminished, especially when it's in first inversion. But you might call this a 2 chord as well, depending on how you hear it. I've been consistently calling these chords diminished chords, just because it makes sense when there's a tonic triad on the other side for it to be a dominant functioning, when there is a tonic triad on the other side of it, I think it makes more sense for it to be a dominant functioning chord. But 2 is fine as well. They both are more or less achieving the same thing. But here we have D, F, B flat, and B flat, which is a tonic triad in first inversion. Passing 7th in the melody, leap down an octave in the alto. We then have E flat, G, B flat, and G. We might be tempted to call that a 4 chord. Actually, no, this is a 4 chord in root position, but with these passing tones in the upper voices, we have a passing 7 chord. As you can see, we have A, C, E flat, and G. So because we have the E flat in the bass, that would mean second inversion. So that would be 7, 4, 3. And then we, of course, we'd probably get we would definitely get a tonic triad after this 4-7 progression. So we have D, F, D, and B flat, which is tonic triad in first inversion. We get some more passing tones going on in all of the voices actually, so I'm looking at this as like a passing chord. Here we get C, E flat, and C, and that looks like a passing 2 chord, or it could be a 7 chord without a root. Ultimately, it's an incomplete chord, so I'm tempted to just leave it like it is, because what matters is on the other side we have a B flat chord in root position, which is just taking the B flat triad and reinverting it back to root position. And then on this beat we have a non-chord tone. This B flat's a chord tone. This G is a non-chord tone. So E flat, B flat, G, and D. That's kind of like a 4-7 chord in root position going on here, so might as well mark that. And then we have E flat, F, A, and C. That's an F7 chord over E flat, but I really think that it's this D that is part of a suspension figure under the tenor, but we will call it 5-4-2 because it does happen on the downbeat and it's happening after a predominant chord, so I might as well mark it. But we do get some non-chord tones going on, some neighbor tones and otherwise. We get D, F, B flat, and B flat, which is where a 5-4-2 chord wants to go, which is 1-6. And then we get E flat, G, B flat, and C. That's a C minor 7 chord over E flat. That's 2-6-5. We know that Bach loves his 2-6-5 chords. We have some passing tones or some otherwise non-chord tones going on here. This A is a non-chord tone. This C is a chord tone, but we get F, F, A, and C. That's a 5 chord, as we would expect, because we have a perfect authentic cadence, and then we cadence on B flat. Yeah, perfect. So that's the A section, and then we get another A section, which for some reason is printed in most editions that I've seen without the repeat sign, and I don't see anything that's really different between these two sections. They seem identical. So the fact that they don't have a repeat sign is kind of interesting. But yeah, it's basically the exact same analysis. We start off in the key of G minor, and we'll call this B flat chord a common chord. And sorry, actually, yeah, it would be uppercase because we're in minor, but then we get a 1 chord afterwards. This is all the same analysis. G minor with some passing tones that continues an octave up, neighboring A flats. Then we get the B natural above, which is 5 of 4, and also our point in which we modulate to C minor, passing tone, and then we get C minor over E flat here, which is 1-6, passing tone. Then we get C, but the C is an accented non-chord tone. It's B, D, G, and D, which is G major over B natural, which is 5-6. And then we have C minor again in root position. That gets put in first inversion on the and. Then we get G, G, D, and B, which is our 5 chord, G major, and then we get a perfect authentic cadence in the key of C minor. And the next section is the exact same thing. We have a pivot chord to the key of B flat here via the C minor. We have an A diminished triad, kind of an interesting 2 going to 7. We don't see it all that often, but here it is happening. Which one might even call an extension of that same 2 chord. Then we have B flat over D, which is 1-6, passing 7th in the melody and a leap down an octave in the alto. We then get 4, followed by a very brief but important passing 7 chord, 7-4-3, that then turns into 1-6 on this beat. And then we have these 4 passing tones going on here that kind of allude to a passing 2 chord, but it's incomplete, so we don't know really what the quality. We know it's a minor 2 chord, or it could be a rootless diminished chord, which would make more sense progressionally, but 6 of one, half dozen another. And then we get the same chord just in root position, B flat, D, F, and D, which is just a B flat major triad. And here we get an E flat triad under this D. That's a 4-7 chord, E flat 7, or major 7 rather. And then we get F7 over E flat, 5-4-2. Sorry, I wrote 4-3. That's 4-2 because the 7's definitely in the bass, even though it might be a suspension. Some non-chord tones here that spell out a 1 chord in first inversion. We then have E flat, G, B flat, and C, which is our 2-6-5 chord, C minor 7 over E flat. And then we have our plethora of non-chord tones here, but we're expecting a 5 chord because this is a perfect authentic cadence in the key of B flat. Here's our 5 chord before we cadence on 1. Okay, so moving into the B section, this is where we start to get new material. So we get a perfect authentic cadence in the key of G minor here. And we're not immediately in the key of G minor. It still sounds like B flat for a while. We really don't get G minor until the cadence, actually. Even though they share a pitch collection, we would expect F sharp rather than F natural, right? So the fact that we see F natural, that's indicative of the fact that I don't think we've modulated. So here we have A, C, F, and C with a passing 7th in the alto. That's just an F major triad in first inversion. That's 5-6. Then we have B flat, C, B, D, and B flat. And we expect that 5 to go to 1, which is sort of implied here. We have a little bit of a 1 going on, but with this C here, it's never fully complete. In fact, the resolution of this suspension is interrupted by switching with the bass. So we get C in the tenor here and C in the bass here, B flat in the tenor here and B flat in the bass here. So they swap and we never get a complete triad. Instead we get E, C, B flat, and D, which has the makings of a C7 chord. But this D above it being suspended kind of makes the chord ambiguous. In fact, the next complete triad we get is D, A, F, and C, which is a D minor 7 chord in root position, which is 3-7. It's kind of interesting to see 1 going to 3. But then we get E natural, G, G, and B flat, and that E diminished triad would be considered as 7 of 5, because E is our leading tone to 5, and 5 is our dominant, or to F, and F is our 5, which we get here, F, F, C, and A, with a passing 7th in the bass. I fit, because of the repeat, I had to fit all this on the one page, so apologies for the writing getting as scrunched as it is. Hopefully talking through it is helping you read the handwriting. We then get D, F, F, and B flat, with this delayed G going on here. So depending on how you look at this, you could look at this as a G minor 7 chord, which would imply this is 6-7, or more specifically 6-4-3, but I think that this is just a tonic triad in first inversion. We have all the makings of it. It's just this G that kind of ambiguifies things, I think that's a word, makes it less clear. Here we get C, A natural, E, and C. That is an A, or sorry, let me check that again. C, A, E flat, and C. And then we get some passing tones here of B flat and G, which would B flat, C, E flat, G. It's kind of like a passing 4 chord, but we get as A diminished in first inversion, which is 2-6, which is what we expect as a pre-cadential, or one of our expectations for pre-cadential chords, or cadential predominant chords. That's what I was trying to say. And then we get D, F sharp, A, and A, with this D up here as well, which is also a chord tone, That is our dominant D major, and then we cadence on one G minor, G, B flat, D, and G. Alright, looking ahead, it looks like we have G or B natural, and A flat, which would imply C minor. However, we have an imperfect authentic cadence actually in the key of D minor. So via C minor, we go to D minor, which is interesting, because that's taking us in the opposite direction of where we expect to go. C minor is 3 flats, D minor is 1 flat. So bridging the gap between two nearby keys with a distant key is kind of interesting, at least in relation to where it's going. C minor is a related key to G minor, but not a related key to D minor. But anywho, let's go ahead and talk about it. So we have this G minor triad here. I think we have just a direct modulation. We could call this a 1 chord as a common chord, but have it be major, but I really do think this is just a direct modulation. This B flat going to B natural is pretty abrupt with no setup. Direct modulations aren't as harsh as they are mid-phrase in a piece of music that doesn't have, phrase markings that are as defined as the chorales, where they have breaks in between them with the fermata, the usage of the fermata. So this, I think a direct modulation, we'll just call this 5. G, B, D, and G with a passing 7th in the bass. We then have E flat, C, G, and C, which is our tonic triad, C minor, and root position. Notice we have this motive again of G going up to A flat, going down to G again, but this time we're already in the key of G minor, C minor, so it's contextualized differently. Here we get B actually we do get B natural before it, but we don't get it before it the first time we hear it. So that would be the main difference between these two, but we're seeing the same motive now iterated in the alto, which is interesting. And here we have D, F, G, and B natural, which is G7 over D, which is 5-4-3, because it's in second inversion. Passing, actually that F is, oh, I said 5-4-3, this is actually 5-6-4, apologies. And this 6-4 chord is okay, because it's a passing figure, and I say it's okay as if anything Bach did wasn't okay musically. This F is a passing 7th. I thought I saw a 7th in the chord, but yeah, no, we get a passing second inversion triad before we get C, G, E flat, and C, which is our tonic triad in first inversion. And we see 6-4 chords in passing contexts like this all the time, linking two similar chords that are inverted. We have a root position and a first inversion, and the 6-4 is usually the bridge between them. 1-6, 5-6-4, 1, or 2-6, 6-6-4, 2, etc. Then we have a passing A natural. Got some cross relations here. Before we go to G minor, so we're pretty confidently in the key of C minor at this point, because we've seen the dominant twice. I hear it in the key of C minor. The melody is definitely C minor focused, but the fact that we get G minor again, I think this is a minor 5 chord, because this B flat is definitely turning this into a minor triad. But coincidentally, I think this is a necessary chord, because I think this minor 5 in the key of C minor is also a minor 4 in the key of D major, and we have all the makings to tonicize that same chord here, A, F sharp, and C, which are the components of an F sharp diminished triad, which would be 7 of 4. However, with the G and the bass, it kind of muddies or weakens the argument a little bit. So the passing tones spell a triad, but the bass doesn't complete the triad. If this were an E flat, or if this were another A, it would be totally fine. Even if this were a C, it would be more analyzable. But the fact that one would notice the diminished triad here linking the two G minor chords together, that's what's important. So we get G, G, B flat, and B flat, which is an incomplete 4 chord, but still a 4 chord nonetheless. We have F, we have A, we have D, and we have A, so we have a passing tonic triad in first inversion here in D minor over F. And then we have E natural, B flat, D, and G. So that would be E minor 7 flat 5 over Actually, no, it's in root position, interestingly enough, and we see interesting cadential chords in imperfect authentic cadences all the time. So instead of 2-6-5 that we've seen so far, this is just a 2-7 chord, 2 half diminished seventh, and then we get all the non-chord tones. We get A, we get A, we get C sharp, and we get G, which is an incomplete 5-7 chord, A major in root position, or A7 in root position. And then, of course, in our imperfect authentic cadence, we cadence on D minor, but we have the F in the melody, which is what makes it imperfect in the using air quotes on that one. But yeah, textbook, they would call that an imperfect authentic cadence. It's a tonic triad in root position. All right, we're getting ready for a perfect authentic cadence at the end in the key of G minor. However, it's not before we go via the key of B flat, and I think this D chord is actually a 3 as well in the key of B flat. We have F going to B flat in the melody, which definitely makes it sound B flat like, and the fact that we don't get F sharp until this beat right here, that's what makes it feel like we're going to G minor through B flat, as opposed to immediately modulating from the minor dominant to the key of the tonic key of the piece. So we go from D major to G minor, to B flat, B flat, B flat, D, and F, which is a 1 chord in root position, so 3 going to 1. We have 1 going to 3 earlier at some point. I remember this. I might be making this up. I have a tendency to make things up sometimes, chord progression-wise, because I confuse the chorales from time to time. I think what might have happened is I confused this 1 going to 3 here. I swear I saw it earlier, though. 1 going to 3, it's right here. We have 1 going to 3, 7. So the fact that we have 3 going to 1 here is kind of interesting as well, because the chords are mostly the same. They have 2 tones in common. The only thing they don't share is one has a different root than the other, and both of the unlike tones are a 7th apart. So it's kind of like going from one chord to the other, just rotating it differently. We have a passing 7th in the bass, and then we have G, B flat, D, and B flat, and I'm going to call this 6. Yeah, it's interesting that we have the motion of 5 going to 1 in the melody, but we get 1 going to 6 in the harmony, which is interesting. Then we have some passing tones, and then we have E flat, G, G, and C, which is C minor in first inversion, which in the key of B flat is 2-6. That's where 6 wants to go. But I think this is the chord that's going to take us to the key of G minor. So C minor's the 4, the subdominant of G minor. So that's a perfectly fine common chord. And then when we get the F sharp on the next beat, it feels a little bit more intentional progression-wise, because we get, and you very easily you actually could have started the modulation on this G minor right here, but it doesn't quite sound like the modulation happens right here, because it's part of this B flat going up, and then we're just ascending the scale. It really takes the harmony to take me out of the mindset of B minor. But then we get C, A, F sharp, and D, which is D7 over C, which is 5-4-3, because it's in, 4-2, because it's in third inversion. The 7th of the chord is in the bass, just like how we've seen at the end of these phrases, right here. And then we have some passing tones. We have B flat, we have D, and we have B flat and C here. So there are the makings of a little passing 3 chord there, even a rootless tonic triad. But I think that's kind of a harder argument to make. In fact, we get the tonic triad on the next beat anyways, albeit it happens late. We have A, D, G, and C, but it's the G, the D, the G, and the B flat that really matter. So we get a tonic triad. Surprisingly, in root position, we usually get 5-4-2 going to 1-6, like we saw before, but 5-4-2 going to 1 with this double passing tone figure is what matters. I think it's really, it moves in the direction you expect, but we don't get the resolution until the next beat, or more specifically the end of the next beat. We then get D, D, G, and A, I think this G is a suspension over the bass, and really this is just a big 5 chord, and that suspension gets realized on the next beat with a delayed 7th before we cadence on 1 major, right? G, B natural, D, and G for a perfect authentic cadence, as Bach often ends his minor chorales on a major chord using the Picardy third. So all in all, this was a very active chorale. Harmonic rhythm at some points was somewhat difficult to pick out, but for the most part it kept a pretty static quarter note harmonic rhythm with more activity as we neared the cadences. All in all, it was really interesting. I think the use of A flat here is really interesting, giving the G minor kind of a Phrygian feel, and the fact that it returns again here. There's definitely reference and imitation going on in sort of like its own special way here. I think editing wise, why it wasn't a repeat just put in? It would have saved me paper, and it's something I should have realized and just done artificially, or something I should have just taken the liberty to do because they were identical, or they are identical. But yeah, it's whatever. We got to double check our work or triple check our work, which is never a bad thing. I think I'll leave you all on that one, though. It's a pretty straightforward, functionally harmonic chorale. I'd say the most interesting thing, at least, from my perspective, where I've been looking at Bach's chorales for a couple of months now, is 2 going to 7, at least in my analysis. The fact that 2 goes to 7 is kind of unusual. There's really no reason why it should be unusual. It's just usually 4 goes to 7. But when we see 2 go to 7, because 2 and 7 share 2 notes in common, it's less, it's not as strong of a progression, I would say. So I think it's more so just a byproduct that this is the beginning of a new phrase, and it just so happens that the chord is being contextualized differently here than it is at the cadence. But that was today's analysis. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching my videos and continuing to support the channel. I have 25 subscribers. Super exciting. I'm super stoked that people are enjoying the content. And also chime in the comments section if there's anything that you saw in my analysis that you thought could be improved or something you agreed with. Is the analysis helpful? Are you enjoying the videos? All feedback is appreciated. So I'll leave you all on that one. Thanks for watching the video again, and I hope you take care.